This time next week, COP26, the big UN climate summit, gets underway in Glasgow. As well as the world leaders, climate scientists, business people, there will be lots of activists trying to get their message across. As our Berkshire reporter Patrick O'Hagan has been finding out, the ways that people do that are changing all the time.
A new wave of activists have blocked motorways and streets in recent months to put pressure on the government ahead of the COP26 climate summit. The latest in a long line of environmental protesters keen to grab our attention.
All the kinds of tactics which organisations like Extinction Rebellion and Insulate Britain have used in the last couple of years are tactics which have been kind of familiar to protesters and familiar in particular perhaps to protest groups focused on environmental concerns for at least 20, 25 years.
Rob Judd is an expert on the history of protest movements. The vogue now is for short, sharp campaigns which disrupt people's everyday lives.
Lots of the forms of protest which were going on in the second half of the 1990s at least tended to be much more kind of focused on big marches from A to B in a way that groups like Extinction Rebellion and Insulate Britain clearly aren't interested in trying to do.
Hello again, everybody!
Steve Masters spent a whole winter of his life up a tree, protesting against the plans to build the HS2 rail link. And he's fully aware that countless others came before him.
We stand on the shoulders of the suffragettes, the Newbury bypass protesters, people who've put their liberty and often, especially around the world, their lives on the line. I sat in a tree for 3 months and was forcibly removed over 8 days. Yeah, it was traumatic, but compared to what some people have done before me, it's probably, quite trivial.
He's a Green councillor in West Berkshire who went for a walk, became increasingly worried by what he was seeing, ending up in a tree.
I walked from Leamington Spa with the intention of going to London along the route of HS2, and I saw that the impact that HS2 was going to do to that woodland and that whole community. So I stayed, and then that few nights resulted in joining the occupation of the wood to protect it and the biodiversity that was there.
He wasn't an activist back in 1996 when the Newbury bypass protests were front-page news, but Polly Piera was.
So 25 years ago, what were you doing here?
I was living up trees and being a protester against the Newbury bypass.
And what was that like?
It was interesting, stressful, exhausting, but I got to meet a load of amazing people and learn lots of things, really.
And while they lost the battle to stop the bypass being built, Polly feels they did achieve a wider goal.
It's obviously not a place of beauty, you can hear the noise, but also there's a sense of actually the Newbury bypass, while they built the road, it stopped the road programme. So it was a major event in kind of history, really. So whilst this road was built, loads of others weren't.
Blocking motorways infuriates motorists, but some campaigners argue it's a legitimate tactic. It's not something Steve Masters in Newbury would do, but he's not finished yet.
I've said time and time again that I'm prepared to go to prison in order to raise this issue, and I will continue to use my platform as a councillor and as a reasonably well-known local politician and resident of West Berkshire to get that message across.
So your days of climbing up trees, that kind of thing, there's more of that to come?
They may well be, as long as the body is able and the mind is willing. I can't rule anything out. Yeah.
All protest movements have their more extreme elements. So what does history tell us about what might happen if the type of disruption we're seeing now doesn't deliver what those protesters want?
People damaging pieces of kind of fossil fuel heavy infrastructure equipment, that's happened in the past. It wouldn't be amazingly surprising to me if we saw those kinds of things as well.
I served in the Air Force. I don't think I'm your typical crusty hippie protester, but I think I'm not unusual.
Extinction!
More and more people now are getting involved because they see the danger that we face not only in this country but around the world.